I thought it was a very interesting discussion Tuesday night between Kirk Herbstreit and David Pollock. And when you listen to the two of them, David Pollock, for those of you who don't know him, he does not pull any punches. He does not hold back. When he's got something to say, he says it. Kirk is a little less direct, but David is not. And the two of them were talking about who should be the number one team in the country. And Kirk Herbstreit's went like this. He said Ohio State number one, Tennessee two, Georgia three, excuse me, with Michigan four, Alabama five, and Clemson six. David had the Dogs number one, Ohio State two, and Tennessee three, with Michigan, Clemson, and TCU filling his last part out. Reese Davis and Joey Galloway were there. It's hard to take Joey Galloway seriously, but Reese Davis had Ohio State, Tennessee, and then the Dogs. Um, Galloway had Ohio State and then Georgia. The only guy that had Georgia at number one was David. I actually don't have an issue personally with Ohio State being anyone's number one. I think that's perfectly, I mean, that makes sense to me. But it's the part about Tennessee that, to me, I think I fall in the camp with David. And here's what Kirk had to say about the two teams. Reese Davis asked him, why do you have Tennessee in front of Georgia? He said, right now, Tennessee is dynamic on that side of the ball, and it's because of Hendon Hooker. He said, Hendon Hooker, that's my answer. That's it. He said, Tennessee's offense right now under Hendon Hooker is that guy. Based on the first 8 weeks, I think if you're looking at separating Tennessee from anybody, it's the way they can outscore. It's the way they can outscore anyone they play. Well, David comes back and says the only thing I would argue with Kirk about is I would say Georgia is more complete. I think Georgia's defense comes into play. I think Georgia's offense is better than it was a year ago. They're using Darnell Washington better. I think they are going to get healthy at wide receiver by the time they play Tennessee 2 with AD Mitchell and company. So I think I would go more balanced. I would go more balanced from Georgia. So this is me reading guys' quotes. Sometimes it doesn't always make sense. He says, it is still not by much. Uh, I lean to just the more complete team being Georgia, which I agree. And I think that's something to not forget. You know, you don't just get to play with Tennessee's offense on the field the entire time. I mean, this is not a basketball game. As close as it feels like, as close as it feels like a basketball game sometimes when Tennessee plays. Um, I think I want to be real clear here because I know we're going to get some balls to get on here. I think Tennessee is probably this either Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, excuse me, Tennessee, Ohio State, Michigan, and Georgia have all, to me, shown that they are the top four teams in the country as it stands today. I think Alabama's probably five. I think that the notion that just because Tennessee beat them means, they're kind of that they're no good or something like that, I'm not sure about that part. I think the big thing too, we're at a moment in time. We don't know what the near future will bring. I mean, I'm recording this on the 27th before Georgia and Florida play, Tennessee and Kentucky play. I don't think Ohio State's going to lose to Penn State, but whatever. I mean, all these three teams, in theory, could lose this week. Georgia's probably the least possible, least likely, I should say. But I just, you know, I think if you look objectively at those three things, Ohio State and Georgia, if you watch them, if you look at statistically speaking, they are better than Tennessee. They just are. I mean, that doesn't mean that Tennessee won't win the national championship. It doesn't mean that Tennessee won't win, in Athens in a couple of weeks. But, you know, everyone discusses often, or it seems like the knock against Georgia is the game that they won on the road at Missouri by 4. Tennessee uh, went into overtime, nearly lost, obviously, with Pittsburgh. I mean, Pittsburgh, I don't think anybody's confusing with being a good team either. So, and we'll see if Georgia beats Florida by more than 5 in a neutral facility. Tennessee, that's how much they beat Florida by at home. So we can get, and then the other thing too, obviously, is that we will see in the very near future. these two teams play each other. So this talk is not, not overly critical. It's kind of strange that we're this late in the season and Tennessee and Georgia have only played. They have not played a common opponent yet. That is very abnormal. I mean, Georgia's already played the bulk of its East schedule. Tennessee's only played the Gators. They played two Western schools. And listen, I mean, the back-to-back weeks, frankly, of UT playing LSU and beating their skulls in, and then kind of surviving Alabama, which was a huge win. That's about as good as it gets for the Vols. We all know that. I mean, beating Tennessee, they hadn't beaten Alabama in 15 years. That probably glosses over the win over LSU, which was also a huge win. But, you know, we're, Georgia has the best win of this college football season so far. I all due respect to the win over Alabama by a field goal at the end of the game. Georgia beat Oregon by 46 points, essentially at home, but they beat them by 46 points. That's a top 10 team. So sometimes I think the guys at ESPN get into a discussion of how are we gonna, they fall in love very quickly. We are prisoners of the moment. There was a lot of dismissing of Oregon's chances. If Oregon has one loss and they're the Pac-12 champions, they probably will be in the playoff. I mean, they probably will be. I don't think they certainly will be. We'll just have to see. Hey, make sure you're picking up DAWGSTRUCTION today. It's our 80-page look at the national championship from a season ago. Georgia and Alabama obviously clashing at the end of the season. We're not going to have these forever. Make sure that you pick it up today. The link is down below. But I think, to me, again, when you look at what, David had to say about this, I think it's the part that is the most. I mean, I think he's correct, which is, hey, is this Tennessee team going to be able to play defense like Georgia? The answer to that is no. Okay, can they play defense like Ohio State? The answer to that is no. I asked Matt earlier today, who would you pick between Michigan and Tennessee if they played in Cincinnati, just in between the two schools? I would not pick Ohio State against. Excuse me, I would not pick Tennessee against Ohio State. I'm not certain I would pick them against Michigan. Um, I think Michigan is the one team people are not taking seriously the way they should. With the way the Vols won against Alabama, it's easy to fall in love with that. The field storming, the points, you know. But I will be very curious to watch the Kentucky game this weekend when Georgia gets done. Obviously, I will be at Georgia, Florida. Be curious to watch that. I will watch a lot of Ohio State and Penn State. That could be trickier than people think. I think Ohio State is just way better than Penn State, and they should win that game kind of going away. But it's on the road. That game is a tricky game for them a lot of the time. But I do have a little bit of I'm not so sure about this, about ranking Tennessee in front of Georgia. Because when you objectively pull back, we are still in the afterglow of Tennessee beating Bama, and that matters a lot. Whenever a team beats Alabama, there is a particular, discussion about them for some time. But you have to play the rest of the season, and you can't just focus on one game. I mean, that would be like saying, "Oh, well, let's look at Georgia's game against Oregon, and that's it." Georgia's got a lot of. I mean, all of these teams have, you know, resumes, for lack of a better term. They all have um, things you can poke holes in. I think, to me, there are fewer holes to poke into Georgia. And people say, well, they have a really weak schedule. What are you talking? I mean, what? Like they're playing, they play a top 10 team and beat them by 46. Now South Carolina's ranked. They beat them by a million, whatever that was. What they did to Auburn, what they did to Vanderbilt. These are all, you know, Ole Miss didn't beat Auburn like that. Vanderbilt, I mean, Ole Miss didn't beat Vanderbilt like that. But I mean, um, I don't think I think you do have to. Uh, I think you do have to be, to me, take a little bit deeper look about uh, the teams and not just be in love with the most recent result. Because even though they did play Tennessee Martin last week, and the final was not indicative of that. I mean, the final was 65-24. Tennessee really kind of beat them worse than that. I thought it was 7-all, and then it was like 40-7. It was very quick, but there had been some really good moments for the Vols, but the great moments were not the overtime victory against Pittsburgh. They were not the 5-point win against Florida. It was the 3-point win. Well, really, it was the win over Tennessee, and then the win over Alabama, which is a 3-point win over Alabama. Which, like, look, that's not nothing. When you look at Georgia, I mean, what's Georgia's best win? I mean, I would say it's probably uh, the Oregon game, but they have a lot of lopsided wins to go through. I mean, they've won 49-3, 33-0, 48-7, 39-22, 26-22, 42-10, 55-0. Um, that's a lot of lopsided wins, and I think that when I watch, I do not see Tennessee right now playing better than Georgia. I see Tennessee's offense playing very well, but the whole team plays. And when you watch them play the Gators, when you watch them play Pitt, they're just, and when you watch them play Alabama, there's plenty, there's just way too many like mistakes on the defensive side of the ball, and that will cost you.